Good afternoon and welcome to the Monday edition of the Betting Edge. As you can see, Prez is still not hosting here. It'll be myself and Marco D'Angelo again, like it was last Monday. Marco from Wager Talk, one of the co-owners of Wager Talk. We're going to go through the NFL card for you today. There's a lot of question marks as we dive in here on a mid-Monday afternoon on the East Coast. And around noontime on the West Coast for Marco. So you might not have a lot of answers or a lot of analysis here on Monday due to the question marks, but we're going to go through everything the best we can for you. We'll give you the line moves. We'll give you the time changes. We'll give you the playoff scenarios to a T. I'll actually read them word for word for everybody out there. So if you got a pencil or pen handy and you want to go ahead and take notes on what's going to occur this coming Sunday. Every game on Sunday, by the way. No Thursday, no Saturday. So we'll get to the entire 16-game card. In order to do that, I need to welcome in my guest analyst here, Marco D'Angelo. Marco, how are you today, buddy?
Doing good. How you doing, Rob?
I am doing good. Obviously, we're heading toward the Christmas holiday, and we're going to try and get you as much info as we can as we'll be off for Wednesday. I think there are a couple of shows being taped tomorrow. But for us, it's the Betting Edge NFL, and we're going to start top of the card here. Game 101-102, the Tennessee Titans at the Houston Texans. Obviously, one of the largest, if not the largest, line move on the board here so far. Houston opened a 1-point favorite, and we've seen that game just go berserk, Marco. All the money so far in on Tennessee. Obviously, the need factor for the Titans. They are a 4.5-point choice now, which is a 5.5-point move. Some places you'll see 5 as a full 6-point move. But the logic behind it is Houston now locked in to the AFC South title. I think they can get up as high as number 3, but regardless, they're going to have to play next week. They'll play at home. Just a matter of who they play. While the Titans battle Pittsburgh for that 6th spot. In the Titans' case, let me go ahead and break down the scenario for these guys. The Titans actually have their destiny in their hands right now. If they win, they're in. If they lose, it gets a little bit dicier because Pittsburgh, if they do beat Baltimore, Pittsburgh would then take that 6th seed. So Tennessee and Pittsburgh obviously both time changed to 4:25 because both of these games have meaning, and the NFL doesn't like opposition to know what the other has done. So, Marco, here we go. A game where we've seen a huge line move, a game where one side has a lot of importance. The other side, Bill O'Brien, I couldn't get a full word on what he plans to do at home in this game with his starters. But go ahead and fill us in how you see this game going.
Well, this is the thing this week, Rob. You've got to really be careful with these games because we don't know what the coaches are going to do that don't have anything to play for. Houston can, as you said, move up to the number 3 spot, but for all intents and purposes, they're probably locked into where they're at. Now, if you are Houston, you got to look at this thing 2 ways. Do I want to get anybody injured as we head into the playoffs? Do we want to play for pride here and knock Tennessee out of the playoffs? Or do you want to play devil's advocate and think about possibilities down the road? If I'm thinking about, which team's going to make the playoffs and which one's not, right now, if I was any team and I am going to the playoffs and I had my choice of possibly playing the Pittsburgh Steelers or possibly playing Tennessee, I would rather play the Pittsburgh Steelers at this point in time in the playoffs. So Houston could do everybody a favor by knocking Tennessee out because when Tennessee's healthy, now we saw yesterday, and it's a little bitter spot with me. I told you right before we went on the air, I'm on a 12-1 run in football the last 2 weeks. Lo and behold, the one loser that I had, Rob, was yesterday with the Tennessee Titans, and it was a 5% play. Both running backs, or not both running backs, but the key running back, Derrick Henry, out for Tennessee. When this team is healthy, and even if they weren't healthy yesterday, they gave the Saints all they could handle and actually had the ball in Saints territory with 4 minutes to go. before they had the fumble on a play that never even got looked at for a helmeting call by the Saints. This is a team that I think they're dangerous down the stretch. And if I had an opportunity to knock them out, I would. You're paying a price for Tennessee. The value is definitely on Houston. But if Bill O'Brien elects to set people, this is a problem in betting this game. I don't want any part of Tennessee with the inflated number. This is one of those cases where I'll look and try to get a read later in the week what Bill O'Brien's going to do. If he is going to play the starters, I might be tempted to take the points here because this is just too many points. Don't overreact to that must need. It's built into the line, and there's also a reason in Week 17 why you're in a must-win situation. That's because you must not have been good enough all year long to have everything wrapped up already. But in fairness to Tennessee, this is not the same team we saw the first 6 weeks of the season. Since Marcus Mariota was benched, this team totally took a new identity, and they've played good football. But you're paying a price for them here.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Marco. And just to tell the listeners out there, the folks viewing this video, how much of a price you're probably paying here. Houston opened up -1, Marco, which to me already had the need factor built into it because power ratings that I keep indicate on any normal Sunday at home at this point in the season, Houston should have been -5. Now we see Tennessee -5. It's 10 points worth of movement off of, what normally should be the price tag here. So be careful. You talked about the injury to Derrick Henry. It looks like he's probable for this upcoming week. I can't see any way that he would miss it. Houston, we talked about, we don't know what Bill O'Brien would do. Hey, listen, when you have Deshaun Watson, a guy who's been hit as many times as he has been, when you have Laramie Tunsil, your top left tackle who walked off the field, banged up a little bit on Saturday. I think he did return to the game, but there's certain guys, Will Fuller on down the list, that you might want to keep healthy in that game rather than go for the number 3 seed. Cleveland at Cincinnati, Marco, a game with zero meaning, a game where Cleveland opened up -3, been pushed down to -2.5. Cincinnati makes the miraculous rally yesterday just to have folks, I could imagine, in sports books scrambling to go back and find their Cincinnati ticket because they were probably thrown in the trash by the time that fourth quarter rally started, only to leave all those ticket holders with a second tearing of the ticket as Miami wins. Cleveland, of course, gets an early jump on Baltimore, but gets shredded after that. Battle of Ohio, there could be some pride at stake, Marco, but it's a game really that's difficult to get involved with here. Like I say, Cleveland currently 2.5 with a total of 45.
Yeah, meaningless game, and generally when we're looking at meaningless games, final week of the season, defense generally takes the week off, Rob. Only way I could look at this game, if I'm going to look at it, would be probably to look to the over in this game. Cleveland, total disarray. They just want this season to end. Probably one and done for Freddie Kitchens. He's lost this team. A lot of player dissension, a lot of comments coming out of locker rooms. Players want traded. There's no way I can lay points on the road with the Cleveland Browns. And Cincinnati, as bad as they looked for 3 quarters yesterday, they didn't quit. So you got to give them credit for that. Again, not a game that I see myself really getting involved in. If I do, you'd probably be looking at the over in this one.
Yeah, point that you made last week when we did the show, Marco, in some of these meaningless games, and it did come true in that Cincinnati-Miami game as they went well over the total in that particular contest. The next game, Chicago at Minnesota, we won't talk about because Minnesota is involved in this Monday night game here tonight. For those of you watching, Marco, the Vikings have an opportunity here to win the NFC North if they could win out and grab some help on the last week of the season, get a Green Bay loss. They could win the NFC North. They could also get up to the number 5 slot. So like I say, a lot of guesswork involved there. But as for tonight's game between Green Bay and Minnesota, it has meaning. We won't hit on the Bears and Vikings just because we don't have the result of the Monday night game yet. We'll move down one to the AFC South matchup between Indianapolis and Jacksonville. Indy opens up 1, bet straight up to 3.5. Marco, the Jacksonville team that came back against the Raiders 2 weeks ago didn't show up against Atlanta. And I'm not so sure that they even showed up against the Raiders as much as they were gifted that game towards the end of the fourth quarter. But Atlanta certainly did the job yesterday. Probably should have scored more than they did. I think they had over 500 total yards worth of offense. And in typical Falcon fashion, they turned 500 yards into 24 points only. But the Colts looked real good yesterday, looked to be playing out the string with a positive attitude. On the road here, -3.5 with a total of 43. Any lean in this game, Indianapolis and Jacksonville?
Again, you're paying a price because everybody did see Jacksonville look like the team that we saw most of the final 6 weeks of the season, with the exception of the Raider game. For Indianapolis, let's give them credit. Their season basically was dead after the Monday night loss. I think there is one weird playoff scenario that the Colts might actually still be live at 7-7 or 7-8 if they get to 8-8, and it's a crazy tiebreaker. But so many things have to happen; it's not even realistic. But you look at them, and what I will point out: one, you're paying a price. This line, the opening look-ahead line on this was actually Jacksonville -1.5. And now we're looking at a number where Indianapolis is -3.5. That's a 5-point move. I don't know that I can justify it. I will tell you this much, that when you are looking at Week 17 and we're trying to find motivational factors, and I said if it's a game that involves two teams that don't mean anything, I generally would look to the over if I'm going to do anything in the total. Also, another little angle that I like, if a team is 7-8, whether or not they're driving for the playoffs or not, it's kind of a little mental thing that if you finish the season at 8-8, you didn't have a losing season. You weren't branded as a loser. And teams do get a little bit of motivation for that. For Indianapolis, I think if you would have told them at the beginning of the season, when Andrew Luck announced he was retiring, that they were going to finish the season at 8-8, I think there would have been a lot of people in Indianapolis who would have been very happy to hear that. So it is something for them to play for. Jacksonville, this is just a team in disarray. They fired Tom Coughlin during the week and last week and everything else. It's just I can't back them. It's Indianapolis or nothing, but you're paying a price for it.
Yeah, they are like polar opposites at this point, Marco, because I can't see Frank Reich as head coach, somebody who would go into this game with sort of a lazy type attitude, just to close out the season. And you're right. I tend to look at the 8-8 factor as well when it applies. And certainly in this case for Indianapolis, I do think it applies. We have current updates here which show Indianapolis eliminated from the playoffs. The Raiders have the biggest, a twilight zone type of opportunity to get into the playoffs, which, 5 of those things came true yesterday. They need about 6 more to happen for them. The Colts 3.5, 43 over Jacksonville in Jacksonville on Sunday. Let's get to a couple of teams here from the NFC South. A team that has played hard down the stretch in the Atlanta Falcons. They're going to go to Tampa Bay. We saw Jameis Winston do what Jameis Winston does one more time yesterday. Single-handedly, I think, when you only lose by 3 and you get picked 4 times and one of them goes back for a pick 6, that sort of puts the game on your shoulders there. Jameis, when he's right, he looks fantastic, Marco. When he's, looking poorly, it usually hurts Tampa Bay in the worst ways. One more time on Saturday, it did. The Falcons here opened up as a 2.5-point underdog to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but that money has come in on Atlanta now. We see Tampa Bay down to -1. Total started 50.5. It's down to 50. It would appear that Atlanta's the right side of this game with all the injuries that Tampa Bay has, and with the way Atlanta's played down the stretch. They're not necessarily the same team on the road that they are at home, but 2 weeks ago they went to San Francisco and won a game where they were a large underdog. So give us a take on Atlanta at Tampa Bay on Sunday.
Well, we got 2 situations going here. We got the 7-8 factor with Tampa Bay trying to get to 500. So, that's going to be a motivational factor. For Jameis Winston, every time he steps on the field, he's playing for a contract next year. whether it's Tampa Bay re-signing him or he goes on the open market. And as bad as he is when he's bad, he's just as good when he's good. So he's going to land somewhere, whether it's still going to be brought back at Tampa. He's going to land somewhere else because there's a lot of quarterbacks out there right now, teams that they would take a chance on Jameis Winston because even with the baggage of all the turnovers, he's an upgrade to what they have at quarterback right now. I could tell you this much. The Pittsburgh Steelers would love to have him right now going into this final week with what they're dealing with as far as quarterbacks go. But on the flip side, there is a big motivation for Atlanta. The players have openly said, we are playing for Dan Quinn. Why? I don't know. They like him. They're trying to save his job. And, it's going to be a tough spot if Atlanta does finish the season, winning out the way they're doing. Do they bring Dan Quinn back? So I got two teams with absolutely nothing to play for, but actually has some motivational edges. I'm going to see where this line shakes out and ends up, Rob. And a perfect example of it was yesterday with both the Cincinnati game with Miami and then the Jets in Washington. We saw both of those numbers go crazy, where it ended up flip-flopping in a meaningless game to from dog to favorite. And this is a spot where whoever settles in as the favorite, I think the right play is taking the dog up on a teaser over the touchdown. And if you would have done that yesterday, both of those games would have got you the money. Miami closed on Sunday as an underdog. You teased them up, you got the win. And then the other one was Jets in Washington. That one opened Washington a winner. I teased the Giants early in the week, got the win, but it closed the Giants a favorite. You could have got Washington over the touchdown yesterday, and that would have been a winner as well. So that's my tip, my take on Atlanta, Tampa Bay for next week.
Yeah, and interesting, Marco. The first time around, the underdog did win this game. Tampa Bay plus 3.5 gets the win 30-27 over Atlanta in their earlier meeting. So I don't know if that means a little revenge spot for Atlanta or if that indicates dog is a good play in this particular game. But there are things to like about both of these teams. And I will say this is when I'm watching that Houston-Tampa Bay game on Saturday, you can see that this Bruce Arians offense just works for this team because it didn't matter at points in that game that Mike Evans wasn't on the field, that Chris Godwin wasn't on the field. Jameis was finding third, fourth, fifth, sixth string receivers, and they were moving the ball pretty good after getting behind 17-3, came all the way back. Of course, then the late interception happened, and Tampa Bay loses just barely to the Houston Texans. I'm going to take a couple seconds here just to point out that Wager Talk and Sports Memo both have $9 Monday here today. Get all plays from every handicapper at Wager Talk, from every handicapper at Sports Memo. Get them all just for $9 a piece. In the case of Marco, $9 Monday has his his 5% bowl game up and available for $9. Now, after midnight, that goes back to $25. So
40.
If you want to get a $5,
goes to 40.
$40. That's exactly right. $40 and $9. I don't have to do the math for you. It's a pretty big difference there. So you want to get involved with these 5% plays while they're up there for $9 Monday. There's more than just Marco at wagertalk.com. There's more than just myself at sportsmemo.com. Had a 5% play yesterday, Giants Washington over. It's always nice to cash those things before the half even ends.
Yeah.
Was the case in that particular game. Tonight, I have a play on the Monday Night Football game up and available for $9. So once again, visit wagertalk.com, sportsmemo.com. Handicapper of your choice. Get one, get a bunch of them. They're only $9. They're all up and available right now at those two sites, wagertalk.com and sportsmemo.com. Move down the list here. We're going to get to the Washington Redskins and the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas at home off of what was a, disturbing performance, to say the least, yesterday by the Cowboys when everything counted for them, Marco. They're still alive, obviously, in the NFC East race. There's nothing to say that Philly can't go out and lay an egg against the Giants this Sunday. I mean, it's the way Dallas and Philadelphia have played all season long. But in this case, Dallas opens a 14-point favorite over the Redskins, 44 the total. It's been bet way down to 10.5. The total remains the same at 44. For the Redskins, Dwayne Haskins does get injured yesterday in that Giants game. Could be Case Keenum throwing the football here for them. He did come in and perform admirably for the Redskins yesterday. But Dallas, Marco, that is the real question here. I mean, that offensive performance yesterday, some strange coaching moves, not having Amari Cooper on the field at the end of the game, opting for Tavon Austin rather than Amari Cooper, saying that he was winded and couldn't really run 3 pass routes in a row without taking a breather. I don't know if I'm buying it, but it doesn't matter. What we worry about is the price tag and the total. And right now that stands at Dallas minus 10.5 in a must-win situation to have any chance whatsoever. Total here, 44.
Yeah, you look at this one, and you alluded to that it opened at an offshore at 14. That wasn't around for long. But if we go back to last week, Rob, this opened up at the Westgate with the look-ahead line. This was only Dallas 7.5 on the look-ahead line. Now, we didn't know what the situation was going to be coming off of the Sunday game, obviously, with Philadelphia. And as you said, Dallas still has a chance, but they don't control their own destiny. And I have found that teams that are in that situation have a tendency to actually play better. They go out because they can't control their own destiny. All they can do is go out and do what they can do and win and hope. So there's not that added pressure of win and you're in. And sometimes when you're in that situation, win and you're in, you play more not to lose instead of playing to win. And that's tough when you're laying point spreads. But if you're in a situation where, you got to win, but you need help, it's, you just go out there and you can be a little bit looser with your game plan, whatever. And I think Jason Garrett, this could be the final time we see him on the sidelines of the Dallas Cowboys. I know we've said that, seems like at the end of every season, but this has really been a season where this team has been all over the place. At times, they look like a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And at other times, they look like they didn't even belong in the playoffs, and that's where they're sitting right now. You look at the roster, there are loads of talent on this team. And for them to be struggling the way they are has to be frustrating, not only for the fan base, but for Jerry Jones. And I know Jason Garrett's been his boy for so long, but it might be time to, cut the apron strings and move in a different direction. I lean to Dallas in this game. I'm going to wait and see where this line settles. I don't like it over the 10. I would like to get it back down to 10 or 9.5 would really be good. I don't think you'll ever see that. 9.5. You might get it back to 10 once Washington solidifies what they're doing, but most likely it is going to be Case Keenum. And it's not like Case Keenum is, total, bust. I mean, he can move this team. And the one thing I can say about Washington, since Callahan's taken over, they have tried hard for him. They're playing. Now, yesterday was a crazy game. They gave up a lot of points, but they scored a lot of points, and they've been in a lot of their games. So I got a weak lean to Dallas right now, but I'm just not going to get involved at the moment. This is one of those ones where it's later in the week to get all the information that we need to make a smart wager.
Yeah, for sure. Washington, Marco, just to add to your point, I mean, you can see on the sidelines the fire to win ball games the last 3 weeks. They have played hard, and they played the two best teams in the division the last 2 weeks and they played the Eagles the week before and the Giants this week, played them both tough, right down to the wire. I want to point out a number that WagerTalk.com's own Ralph Michaels pointed out to me last week, and referring to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm pretty sure he told me it's since 2012, so a good 8 NFL seasons running. The Dallas Cowboys net total yardage of plus 110 is the highest total of such in those 8 years. And yet Dallas sits here, in the land of mediocrity. 8 years, nobody's had more total yards than their opponent, than the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, they lost the total yardage battle yesterday, so that number's changed a little bit. But heading into yesterday, plus 110, and in the spot that they're in, just goes to show what a roller coaster ride it has been for that particular team. Next up, an NFC South battle, New Orleans Saints against the Carolina Panthers. Boy, for anybody who saw Greg Olson's little post-game interview, just not pleased with the performance of his team. Verbally beat up the Carolina Panthers for the product that they have put out in the field the last couple of weeks. Here they're going to play the Saints. Saints opened 13-point favorite. They remain 13-point favorite, total of 48. Remains at 48. Where the Saints are concerned, we'll read this one to you word for word as far as their playoff scenario goes. Now, they do have an opportunity to be the number one seed in the NFC, so that's important for them. If they were to tie with the Packers hold the tiebreaker over the Saints, so that wouldn't help them any. So what they need is they need a 49er loss, they need a Packer loss, and then they need to win. And boy, all roads will go through the Superdome, Marco, which, of all the home field advantages, and I guess Foxborough rates right there with it, but that's as difficult a venue to win a playoff game as there is. We saw them last year have that same advantage. Of course, the referee called at the end in the Rams game kind of took that away from them, but I'm sure New Orleans wants to be at home. 13 points, another story, though. Obviously, you're paying a little bit of a price here, but boy, lately, the last couple of weeks, Drew Brees and company have moved the football like they hadn't for a while. So how do you see New Orleans in this large road favorite role against the Carolina Panthers?
Well, the first thing I need to check out involving betting the Saints game, are there any more records that they can break? Is there any players chasing a record? Because it seems if they are chasing a record, this team is hell-bent on making sure they get that record for the player. 2 weeks ago, you saw it on Monday Night Football against Indianapolis with a big lead. They're still throwing the football all over the place to get Drew Brees the touchdown record on national TV. Then yesterday with the game on the line, it was a 3-point game. They went play after play after play to get Michael Thomas, the record, single season reception record. I think they threw like 5 consecutive passes to him yesterday. This is one of those things. They play at 1 o'clock. One of the teams they're involved with, Green Bay, plays at 1 o'clock, but then the rest of the scenarios later in the day. So there's a chance, they got to do their part and then wait and see what happens later. So it's not a case of, hey, well, we already know that we're out of it. Let's not show up and rest people. They got something to play for. But you are laying 13 points. The look-ahead number in this game was 11 last week. And given how bad Carolina looked yesterday, and now we don't even know who the quarterback's going to be this week, because obviously the 1 week test run of Will Grier didn't look good at all yesterday. They're not sure who they're going to go with this week. We're waiting to see that. But 13 points is a lot, but I just don't know how Carolina stays with them. The Saints score at will, it seems like, against everybody. Christian McCaffrey can have a big game, but, is he able single-handedly to keep them within 2 scores? That's what you're betting on if you're betting Carolina, because I think everybody else on this team pretty much is quit, waiting to see who the coach is going to be, who's going to be there next year, and so forth. I don't want any part of the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, they did not look good yesterday, Marco. They almost look like a team that has checked out. I alluded to Greg Olson, the tight end's comments after the game. Not pleased. It's hard to tell. We can't really get between the ears. We're not in the locker room of these teams to know exactly whether or not it's just a give-up situation or if they'll respond to a guy who's a team leader. And his type of comments there, ever since Ron Rivera was fired, it's been pretty much downhill for this team. Meanwhile, New Orleans, as you mentioned, trying to force feed Michael Thomas yesterday every chance they got. They just look good on offense all of a sudden. And the last 2 weeks, Marco, they've actually covered up some very serious defensive injuries, especially across that defensive front with Rankins and Davenport both missing. And it just hasn't seemed to make a difference. They've been able to outscore people pretty easily the last couple of weeks. Next up, the Eagles and the Giants. We talked about it briefly a little bit earlier when we were talking about the Dallas Cowboys, but the Eagles have it all in their own hands now, and this is the most unlikely final week of the season spot I think that any Eagles fan might have had in their mind. They just seem to have been out of this divisional race. They stuck with it, pulled out a couple of close games against overmatched opponents, and then got themselves to the position where they could play Dallas for the right to win the NFC Eastern Division. And now it's all in front of them. I had said to you off air, or maybe I said it on there, I can't even remember now, but that I wouldn't put it past the Eagles to go out there and lay an egg now that they've had such success. It's been such a pendulum for both the Eagles and Dallas all season long. But here they open up a 4-point favorite, 45 is the total. They've moved up to a 4.5-point favorite, 45.5 the total. Daniel Jones came back yesterday for the Giants and absolutely lit it up against the Redskins. The Giants are not void of offensive talent here, and the Eagles secondary is still the Eagles secondary. The Eagles pass rush still goes through massive lulls during a game where they don't get to the quarterback. So the Giants could be very live here, Marco. This is a pretty fierce rivalry. The Giants are going to come to play. I would guarantee they'll come to play. So 4.5. Does Philadelphia get a little tight in this game if it goes along as a close ball game, or do you think Philadelphia gets out quick and maybe goes wire to wire against the Giants on Sunday?
I think your opening statement is the one spot on. It would be poetic justice for this division for Philly to go out and lay an egg on Sunday. You're asking a lot and to be back in the Giants. If this wasn't the situation as far as the season on the line and maybe the line being a little bit inflated because of it, I would be looking at Philadelphia because I like the angle when it's a second meeting and a team struggled the first meeting at home at a big number. If you remember, that was the Monday night game, and Philadelphia was at home playing Eli Manning because the injury to Daniel Jones. They were life and death to beat them. And so often, I think the second meeting for the road team after the close scare at home is a high percentage play, and I would be all over Philly. But that is negated by this is a must-win situation for Philadelphia, and we just talked about it. Too often these teams that control their own destiny and are in that must-win, they play not to lose instead of playing to win, and too often that can cost you the point spread, and I could very easily see this coming down to a field goal. So I'm going to wait till later in the week. I think there's only one way this line will go as we get closer to kickoff. The public's going to bet Philadelphia because they did look good yesterday, or was it a case that the Cowboys look so bad? Either way, they're in the driver's seat. I think people are going to bet them rather than bet against them, and I might wait to see how high of a line I can get with the Giants. But my initial take is to lean to the Giants.
Yeah, and if you just go inside that Eagles-Dallas game a little bit yesterday, Marco, there's some very, very important Dallas Cowboy drops in that game that certainly make the final score look maybe a little better than it could have been, including one Michael Gallup, who not only dropped a pass that should have been a completion, dropped a pass that might have been a touchdown and changed that entire game. So we'll see how it goes. Philadelphia and the Giants, the fiercest of rivals. Eagles division title on the line. We talked a little bit about spoilers last week. There's a case where the New York Giants are going to want to play the spoiler role. Pittsburgh at Baltimore. Here we go. Baltimore has clinched the number 1 seed in the AFC. They're it. What John Harbaugh decides to do with his players, I don't know why you would want to put Lamar Jackson at risk, except for the fact that sometimes head coaches don't like to have their players sit for 2 full weeks. Baltimore will have a bye. They won't play till the following week, so perhaps you get them in for a half or something just to keep them game ready, in game shape. For the Steelers, they need to win, Marco. They put themselves in that position yesterday by going to the Meadowlands and losing to the Jets. Quarterback situation looked like it had taken an uptick for a minute there because Mason Rudolph was throwing the ball pretty well, but then Mason Rudolph gets hurt. We go back to Hodges. It doesn't look good again. James Conner goes out of that game. The one bright side, Juju Smith-Schuster did come back and play in that contest. Here we see Baltimore open up as -1. And you would think in a situation where Baltimore might rest their starters, you'd see a rush to the window for the Steelers. We don't see that rush. It's gone from Baltimore -1 to Pittsburgh -1, only a 2-point move in this game. Total 39.5. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Marco, how would you look at it?
Well, again, the situation with the Steeler quarterbacks is just, it's bad. Duck Hodges was horrible yesterday and now has to go back in by default. I am seeing here in Vegas, the Westgate has this up to 2 on the Steelers. And I don't care if Baltimore's playing all backups. If I can tease and get Baltimore over a touchdown, there's no way I see this Pittsburgh offense on the road getting separation. And that would mean for me to lose getting on a 6-point teaser, getting 8 points, that they got to score. They got to win by 10. This is a team that can't get to 20. All right. So how are they going to win by 10? I got to take Baltimore in teasers, regardless of who's in there. And the situation being, I think based on what you're seeing with the line, because the look-ahead line was Baltimore 3, which even the look-ahead line was guessing that this was going to mean nothing for Baltimore, because obviously Baltimore would be more than a 3-point favorite with all hands on deck. This is just too much of a move. I can't do it. Tease Baltimore right now. They'll be in a bunch of my teasers. I just don't see Pittsburgh winning by a margin. Plain and simple. Not much to talk about. Their defense has been good, but look at the total. It's 38. We're looking at a total of 38. If I can get 8 points in a game where the total's 38, that's where I'm at. So I'm teasing Baltimore up.
And just to make the quarterback situation clear here and to add some credence to what you're saying here, Marco, if Lamar Jackson doesn't go, it's RG3 that will start for Baltimore. And Robert Griffin III is 10 times better than whatever Pittsburgh puts on the field as a quarterback, and assuming Duck Hodges. So, the line move necessarily, even with a second-team quarterback in for Baltimore, might not be justified. Baltimore probably still better at that point than what Pittsburgh will be offensively. We'll see where that game goes to. Like we always say, the need usually attracts the money, and sometimes it tracks it too far, and you can come back on the other side. The Jets are at Buffalo. Buffalo with a tough loss to New England on Saturday. Marco, looked like that. I think they're on the 8-yard line with a chance to go in and tie. Wind up not getting in on 4 downs. Here they're going to play the Jets. The game opened Buffalo -5, now down to Buffalo -1. Another team that's locked into the playoffs, but really with no movement for them possible here. They're going to be a road team in the playoffs. So do you rest Josh Allen and company? Again, coach's decision here for Sean McDermott that we can't predict on Monday afternoon. The Jets with a nice win over Pittsburgh, now take to the road against their AFC Division East Division rival. Like I say, open 5-37. It's down to 1-37. Total remains the same. Jets, Buffalo, I guess it's a lot more of the same that we've talked about already, Marco. Question marks, and maybe a little too early to give a real clear analysis.
Obviously, the bookmakers are expecting Buffalo to set players. For this line to come down to 1 the way it was, it opened for a brief period at that. The look-ahead line was 4.5. Chris Offshore actually opened it at 5.5. Here in Vegas, Circa, who was first to the window yesterday, they opened it up at a pick'em, and we've seen, a line with around town sitting at pick or -1. I can't, Buffalo has nothing to play for. As you said, they can't better or worsen their position. They're locked in. They're the number 5 seed, no matter what happens. And the Jets, give them credit. They played well yesterday. I don't know that maybe well is not the right word. They won the game. Okay. They did what they needed to do. They didn't put up a lot of points. Again, the Steeler defense has been fantastic. The Buffalo defense is fantastic, but Pittsburgh was playing yesterday. They had something to play for. Buffalo doesn't. So I don't see Buffalo having that big defensive effort that you saw from the Steelers against the Jets yesterday. This total might just be a little bit too low, Rob. Based on it, people are going to look at the Buffalo defense. They're going to look at the Jets' score last week with Pittsburgh and see that it was, similar type number, but Buffalo's not going to play with that intensity. And if Josh Allen does play, you've got a much better quarterback going against the Jets defense. And if Josh Allen doesn't go, well, the backup wants some playing time. He's going to want to throw the football around a little bit because you're going into the playoffs. God forbid, what happens if Allen gets hurt? You want to get him some exposure and run some of that offense. I think this total's too low. If I was playing anything, I would take the over in this game. And right now you can grab a 36 at Westgate.
36 available right now in Las Vegas at Westgate. The backup here for Buffalo, should Josh Allen not go, is Matt Barkley. Matt Barkley, like you say, Marco, he's a capable NFL backup quarterback. He can come in and throw the ball around. Just thinking of something while you were talking there, it's very interesting that if we were discussing college football in situations like this, we would be saying that a team without, in college football, let's put it this way, in the beginning of the year, you have games where they're huge favorites with a bigger game on deck, and the favorite usually doesn't game plan for the team that they're going to cakewalk over. They're game planning for 2 weeks away. I'm just thinking in my head, we never really talk about that in the NFL. Could it be possible that Buffalo skips right by the Jets and game plans for their playoff game next week, or any situation? The Houston Texans, do they just skip by Tennessee and game plan for what they're going to face? So a lot of things, like we said earlier, a lot of question marks where you just don't know what's going on and what the approach will be from these teams. That's why information is key. If you can read enough, sometimes beat writers will give you that tidbit of information that you need to lead you down the right road to a winning bet. Here's a game that does matter. Miami against New England. The Patriots heavy favorites here, 16.5 points. I think I saw some 16s out there, but mostly 16.5. A game in which they have to win, because if they want to lock up a first-round bye and the home field advantage in that next round, they'll have to hold off Kansas City. So that means they win. If they win, they have the number 2 seed. If they don't win, the door's open for the Kansas City Chiefs. Miami yesterday gets a victory over Cincinnati. Very good game, competitive game between those two teams, high-scoring game. You willing to lay the 16.5 with New England, Marco? I guess the back door here could always be open. If New England's up by 21 points in the fourth quarter and Tom Brady and everybody are pulled because the number 2 seed is locked, maybe Miami, who throws the football around the lot with Ryan Fitzpatrick, could stick one in there and lose by 14. So that has to enter at least a little bit of the handicap as well. Right now we're looking at New England minus 16.5 with a total of 45.
Yeah, well, as we speak, Rob, the line offshore has gone to 15.5 at both Pinnacle and Chris. This has just happened in the last couple minutes. When that happens, generally speaking, you're going to see that move in a few minutes here in Vegas as well, is a lot of the books here in Vegas, they won't admit it, but they move on air. Okay. When they see it happen offshore, they know what's coming here in Vegas and they try to get in front of the move. So while there's 16s out there, I'm going to tell you, if you have any, interest in the Miami Dolphins, get them now, because I don't see this line going back up. I think it was a little bit too high to start with. Let's not forget, this is a New England offense that has struggled. They have not put up a lot of points. And what I might be inclined to is, while this is still at 15.5, tease Miami up and get them over the 21 points. At 15.5, you can use a 6-point teaser and get them to 21. I just don't see this Miami Dolphin or this New England offense beating anybody by 21 points nowadays. And especially given the situation that you just said, even if they are up big late in this game, second half, late third quarter, early fourth quarter, what is your benefit of keeping the pedal to the metal? There's none. You're already a thin team to start with. Why risk injury? And you could get the back door with Miami, although teasing them to three touchdown dog, I don't see them being ever in that position of outside the 3 touchdowns with Fitzpatrick. I'll go ahead and tease Miami and take the inflated number and hook them up with some of those other games that we talked about on teasers and, kind of do a round robin teaser.
Yeah, it's a classic game, Marco, where, the old Al Davis line, just win, baby. There's no extra anything for winning by margin here for the Patriots. Just win, get out, get your home field, get your number 2 seed, and go ahead and set your sights on the playoffs. Green Bay and Detroit is the next game up. Again, we won't hit on this game because Green Bay is involved in the Monday night game. We have talked about them a little bit. Their playoff seeding could range as high as number 1 in the NFC. So a lot riding on their game tonight with the Vikings. The LA Chargers are going to Kansas City. And I'll say one thing, Marco, it was absolutely amazing. And I know for 2 years we've talked about it, how the Chargers have no home field advantage. But to see all the silver and black in the stands yesterday at that Raiders-Charger game was incredible. There was one picture of a lone Charger fan surrounded by, about 150 Raiders fans. It was crazy. They're probably happier to go on the road. I'll tell you one thing. There won't be many Charger fans in Arrowhead Stadium. I actually was there in Arrowhead last year for that Thursday night game. And that's one wild place. This is a team with something to play for, as we mentioned, albeit a very long shot that Miami could beat New England. There's still a chance. Kansas City's played well as of late. We've hit on their defense quite a bit here. That's been one of the main reasons for the improvement. Steve Spagnuolo, once again last night, I know the Bears are an inept offense, but Kansas City looked good defensively. Here, they open up as a 7-point favorite, total of 48. Games moved to 7.5 with 46s out there right now. A blitzing defense against Phillip Rivers, who's been just throwing it to the other team this year, Marco. I don't know. To me, that price looks a little cheap. But again, I guess Kansas City, like I said earlier, they have to come to play because there is the outside shot Miami could win. They'll be scoreboard watching. Maybe, if they see New England's got a comfortable lead, maybe Pat Mahomes comes out of the game. But still, they looked pretty good in a few efforts without Pat Mahomes so far this season. So, to me, like I say, this 7.5 at home looks a little bit small. How about you?
Yeah, the 7.5, I'm surprised that they left it here. I expect this game to go to 9. And the reason I expect it to go to 9 is a teaser blocker. If they leave this up at 7.5, they're going to get bombarded by 6-point teasers on the Kansas City side that's going to take them down to -1.5, get you down through all the key numbers of 7, 6, 4, and 3, and you get to do it on a 6-point teaser. If they push it to 9, and as I said, we call that a teaser blocker, you can no longer use a 6-point teaser to get it below the field goal, and you have to go either 6.5 or 7, and then you're laying much more juice on that teaser. Kansas City, you're exactly right, even though the games are simultaneous. But if they go to halftime, they're going to know what the score is in the New England game. I don't care if they don't put the scores up on the scoreboard or not. They're going to know. Somebody's going to get somebody word on there. Everybody's got their smartphones and everything else. If New England's up 21, they could pack it in this one and not have anything to play for. The problem is right now, even if they did take Mahomes out, we saw the 2 games that he was out. The Kansas City offense, although it wasn't nearly as efficient as it was with Mahomes, they still moved the football in those 2 games against Green Bay and Minnesota. Green Bay, a bad defense. Minnesota, a good defense. So if they do go with the backup and more, I'm not, really concerned that there's that, enough of a drop off that would make me want to run to the Charger side. Phillip Rivers is done. Just no other way to do it. He doesn't think so. You just got to watch his, he doesn't have the arm strength. They're catching up to him. Plays that he's trying to make and throw cross field and so forth, he just doesn't have the arm to complete the throws. And defenders are able to, lay off and close on the football. And it's a bad situation. And if they fall behind in this game by a couple scores, and he's got to throw the football on more downs, they're in big trouble. And I agree with those teasers on Kansas City. I think it's one of the safer bets on Sunday.
Yeah, there's no doubt where Philip Rivers. It's almost sad to watch, Marco. The guy has an outside shot at the Hall of Fame, maybe a better than outside shot at the Hall of Fame. The numbers that he's racked up, what he's missing is a Super Bowl. But you can see, even on pass patterns where maybe there's a cross-up between he and the receiver, strong-arm quarterbacks don't get picked off every time that happens. Philip Rivers gets picked off every time that happens because the ball is just floating somewhere aimlessly and the other team's returning that interception. To me, it's a bad formula for the Chargers here, a blitzing defense against a offensive line that doesn't protect very well and a quarterback that's just chucking it up right now. So we'll see what happens between the Chargers and the Chiefs. Arizona at the Rams, NFC West battle. Nothing at stake here. The Rams put everything on the line Saturday night against the San Francisco 49ers. Came extremely close. It took a field goal as time expired for the 49ers to get out alive, 34-31. Jared Goff and the offense look sensational once again. Arizona yesterday, Marco, they lose their quarterback, Kyler Murray, to a hamstring injury. In comes Brett Hundley against the Seattle Seahawks. They do the job. They finish off the deal there. Seattle, boy, oh boy, on the injury front, they got nothing but more bad news. Chris Carson, their top running back, out now for the season. Dwayne Brown, their left tackle, out for 3 weeks. Adds on to some injuries here. They're down to a fourth-team running back in Travis Homer, rookie out of Miami of Florida. Not only have they lost Chris Carson, but they wind up losing Rashad Penny a couple of weeks ago. CJ Prosise, and word this afternoon that they have Marshawn Lynch in their offices and could be in uniform by Sunday. So Seattle, with a chance to win the division here against San Francisco, two banged up clubs to start with, but San Francisco's a little more on the mend than the Seahawks are, although I will say this, Jadeveon Clowney's expected back. That would be big for them. On the defensive side, they could get a couple of key guys back. In this game, we see Seattle and San Francisco open up at pick, total of 47. Game has moved all the way to 49ers -3, probably rightfully so. Like I say, I think the injury situation now is just a ton to overcome. And I think there's that little something of Seattle beating San Francisco the first time around. So up in Seattle, a home field that hasn't carried its usual advantage this season for the Seahawks. You think San Francisco, with the number one seed at stake here for themselves, victory makes them the number one seed, -3 worth laying here with the 49ers?
Yeah, I'm not sold on the 49er defense right now, and I know they catch a huge break with all of the injuries to Seattle. But you know what? Who's not injured? Russell Wilson. And I'll tell you what, with the game on the line right now, Russell Wilson's still a magician. And this is an overreaction to all of the injuries, which I can understand. You have to have this at 3, but we're talking about a game where it was a pick'em. So you're going to make the running backs worth 3 points in this game. Let's see what happens if they do sign Lynch. Let's see what he looked like in practice and how many carries they can expect to get out of him if they sign him and they decide to go that route. Remember, he was here before, so he knows the offense. So it's not like you're bringing in a player that doesn't know the system at all. You're just a question of, what type of game shape is he in for this game and how many miles are left on that on the car there. But I'm not sold on San Francisco. This defense is really broken down the second half of the season. The first half of the season, granted, they were healthy, but they were also playing a softer schedule. And it made the defense look a lot better than they were. Now, as they're playing a tougher schedule the second half of the season and injuries have taken its toll, this team has really given up a lot of yardage and a lot of points. That's a concern to me. Will they be tested by Seattle? That's wait and see. But this is still a tough place to play. And as far as yesterday, as bad as Seattle played, it was a bad spot for them. This was a game where we do our show bet on it every week. I do what I call the sandwich game of the week, and it's finding a bad situational spot for a team where they're coming off something and have something on deck, and I like to go against that team in that situation. Well, Arizona was my play yesterday. We were going against Seattle in the spot they were yesterday, coming off of just finishing playing 4 out of 5 weeks on the road and having the game on deck with San Francisco. You'll get the best Seattle has to offer, no matter who's on the field. Will that best be enough to beat San Francisco? We'll have to wait and see. But you give me something to play for, you give me a Sunday night game at home, and you give me Russell Wilson. My initial read is to take a look at Seattle in this one, even with the injuries.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Marco, although the situational ingredients are not exactly the same in this contest, it's eerily similar to Dallas going to Philadelphia last week and laying 2.5. What the eyes saw last was Dallas winning, the Philadelphia Eagles struggling to win against a poor team. Here you've got San Francisco winning on Saturday night. I think people ignore the fact that they gave up so many yards, so many points, and they see the Seattle loss. And here you go. You've got a 3-point number. Real quick, an angle that I always take note of. When a better than 500 team, a playoff type team, has back-to-back home games and they lose that first home game, generally speaking, I'll come back with that team in the second of back-to-backs. Home games are at a premium. You only get 8 a year. For Seattle, that would put them in that spot this week. We'll see where this line goes as the week goes on. As the Seattle injuries are more publicized, perhaps San Francisco gets more money. Let's close it out here, Marco, with Oakland at Denver. I said off the top, Oakland still has a minute chance of making the playoffs should they win here. What it entails is not only them to win, but they'll need a victory by one of these teams, Bears, Lions, Chiefs, or Patriots. It's not a great chance, but it's a good enough chance. The Patriots probably win. But they have to go to Denver and win this game. And I'm not so sure that they can go to Denver and win this game. Drew Lock has turned that offense around a little bit. We saw it yesterday in the fourth quarter. He came out in an interview last week and said, I'm going to continue to gunsling it. And that's what he did yesterday against the Lions. Oakland gets the win against the Chargers yesterday, but to me, going on the road here against Denver, a little bit of a different story. Denver opened 4.5. Oakland's attracted some money. Game's down to 3.5 total, started 41.5, down to 41. Let's finish it off here with Oakland at Denver.
Yeah, this is a tough game to handicap because, you do have the slim chance for Oakland to make the playoffs, so the game definitely means something for them. On the flip side to that, Denver, you're exactly right. There's a little bit of excitement now with the backup quarterback. He was their draft choice, injured at the beginning of the season, so didn't get the shot behind after Flacco got hurt. Came in late in the season, so they're going to be motivated. There's no question about that. Now, on the Oakland side, they've got to win. They also are one of those 7-8 teams where coming into the season, if you would have told the Raiders you're going to be 8-8 this year, and I know every coach thinks they have a chance to go to the playoffs, the Raiders realistically knew that they're a couple years away. To get 8-8, heading to Vegas with some momentum, that's something for them to play for. So you are going to get, everything Oakland has to offer. But what I've seen of the Oakland Raiders the last month, I'm not impressed. Even though they got the win yesterday, they got the win because the Chargers just couldn't put up any offense. Pure and simple. Phillip Rivers cannot generate anything right now. Denver does have a good defense. You look at this Denver team, and as bad and as inept as the offense has been at times this year, they gave up 17 points Sunday to Detroit, 23 to Kansas City on the road. Granted, that was in a snowstorm. They held Houston to 24. We know that Houston can score a ton of points. Chargers 20, Buffalo 20. This is a team that more often than not holds their opponents to 20 or less. And if they do that again here, they win this and cover this game. Initial read would be lean to Denver in the spoilers role, but not something that I really want to be laying points with a 6-9 team in the final game of the season, because you're trying to bank on the fact that Denver's going to show up and play. There's a reason they're 6-9, but I don't want the Raiders here.
Right. There's always a reason why you're 6-9. That is for sure. As we close here, I want to remind everybody one more time, $9 Monday at wagertalk.com, $9 Monday at sportsmemo.com. Each and every handicapper has their selections up and available right now for $9. In the case of Marco D'Angelo, it is a 5% college football bowl play. You can get it for $9 up until midnight. After midnight, that play goes back to $40. So go ahead and get it now. $9 Monday. Every handicapper for both sites offering their plays for just $9. Marco, thanks for joining me, getting through this NFL card. Hopefully we brought some good info to those watching us. Been a pleasure the last couple of weeks. I'll give way to Prez next Monday. You'll have him back, but it's been fun the last couple of weeks doing the show for him.
Do I have to take him back? I saw the picture that Joe Ranieri had of the Prez. That was
Marco.
I just full disclosure, our buddy Johnny Detroit. Wednesday I'm in the studio doing videos. Well, I always have my iPad on set because I want to see my stats and stuff that I'm talking about. And if I get a text, it pops up on my screen. And during the filming of that, he had just got done seeing The Betting Edge with you and Ranieri and Joe, and he says, "Oh my God, you've got to watch the last 5 minutes of that. It's priceless." And I'm trying to tape a show, and that's the text I'm getting. So I did check it out, and it was quite hilarious. I enjoyed it. Showed it to my wife later in the day, and she was howling at it as well. Gotta love Joe, huh?
Tell you what, he got me good there, Marco. As serious as we try to be, as professional as we try to be, sometimes something like that, when you're caught, left out, blindsided by something like that, I couldn't contain it. I actually texted Johnny after this show before I even uploaded the show. I said, "You got to watch the last 3 minutes of this because Ranieri's just priceless." But it's been fun. I've had a lot of one-on-ones here with Wager Talk handicappers that I've not done shows individually with before, so it's been good. And like I say, next week, everybody watching, you'll have the Prez back. But for now, from Marco and I, have a Merry Christmas, good holiday season here. Wager Talk videos, sportsmemo.com videos will continue during the week, but I think we do have Christmas Day, Christmas Eve. The NBA tip-off show might be going. But anyway, hopefully we brought you good information here on the NFL, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow on The Betting Edge. Take care, everybody.